Chapter 4 The Graffiti Writer. A blank page, a blank wall, a blank expression. Carl couldn't help himself. He had to write his name on anything blank. He used a marker, spray paint, ketchup, or whatever was available. He wanted to be known on page 25 of the 6th grade math textbook, underneath the water fountain, and even on the morning announcements. He loved being famous. Then 25 years ago, he had written his famous signature all over Middle School 99. Mr. Clemens had nightmares of Carl's graffiti. He was the school custodian who had to paint over Carl's name on the bathroom wall, the school's front door, and even the ceiling in the auditorium. Mr. Clemens devised a plan to cure Carl of his cravings. He brought him to the art room for the first 3 hours of the school day to exhaust all of his tagging energy. After 1,239 signatures, a very sore wrist, and 20 boxes of spray paint, Mr. Clemens thought Carl had worn out his urge to write graffiti. But on the way out, Carl spray painted "thank you" on the door and included his signature. It was time for Plan B. After Carl wrote his name on a wall, Mr. Clemens would write other kids' names next to, below, and above Carl's name. Mr. Clemens thought that if Carl's name was not special anymore, if his name was surrounded by other names, then maybe he wouldn't write any more graffiti. Unfortunately, Carl had the opposite reaction. He felt even more special. Carl thought that he inspired a graffiti revolution. And even worse, now Mr. Clemens had even more names to clean off the walls. It was time for Plan C. Mr. Clemens thought that if Carl could appreciate the beauty of open space, he might be cured of his destructive habit. One day after school, Mr. Clemens brought Carl to the roof to appreciate the clear sky. Unfortunately, Carl saw the sky as a canvas and daydreamed about skywriting his name with a small plane. Mr. Clemens tried again by bringing Carl out to the open air of the baseball field, but Carl never looked up. He was writing his name in the sand in front of home plate. Plan D had to resort to old-school punishment. Mr. Clemens decided that Carl needed to clean his own graffiti after school, while listening to opera and using a toothbrush. If Carl could connect the pain to his graffiti, maybe he would think twice. When Carl was finished with 3 hours of scrubbing, Mr. Clemens asked him what he learned from his punishment. Carl responded, "I will never run out of places I can write graffiti. I can clean any old tag and replace it with a fresh new signature the next day." It was time for a home visit. Mr. Clemens needed to investigate Carl's background and find out the root of the problem. When Mr. Clemens arrived, he expected to find Carl's home full of graffiti, but the opposite was true. Carl lived in an immaculate, orderly house without any graffiti. The walls were all white and blank. There was no art supplies, and you couldn't find any evidence of Carl anywhere. And that is how Mr. Clemens finally realized how to solve Carl's graffiti problem. Graffiti was a strategy to be known. Carl just wanted people to respect him for whom he was. Mr. Clemens just needed Carl to change his strategy. The next day, Carl found a megaphone in his locker with a note that read, "So everyone will know who you are." And as instructed in the note, whenever Carl felt compelled to write his name on a wall, he yelled in the megaphone instead. 83 times that day, Carl announced to everyone his name, and instantly Mr. Clemens had less work to do. There was just a new small problem, but nothing someone else couldn't clean up.